Oh, am I not lip syncing correctly?
Thanks for seeing the show.
People in this country, they don't get it. They have no idea that Christmas time is ghosty time. There's only one man that can explain that to us. His name is Gordon Linzner. He has a kick-ass beard. He knows everything about New York City. He's a tour guide. He knows everything about ghosts tonight. And Gordon, come on down and show them your fantastic hirsuteness. You're a beautiful man.
There we go.
That's better. Out of the eyes and on the paper. That's good. Yeah, it's actually an excerpt from an introduction of Jerome K. Jerome Ghost Stories. He wrote some during Victorian times, which is the heyday of the Christmas Eve ghost story. So why are there ghosts at Christmas Eve? Well, we'll start out. It was Christmas Eve. I begin this way because it's the proper, orthodox, respectable way to begin. And I've been brought up in a proper, orthodox, respectable way and taught to always do the proper, orthodox, respectable thing. And the habit clings to me. Of course, as a mere matter of information, it's quite unnecessary to mention the date at all. The experienced reader knows it was Christmas Eve without my telling him. It is always Christmas Eve in a ghost story. Ghosts never come out on Christmas night itself, you may have noticed. Christmas Eve has been too much for them. They're not used to the excitement. For about a week after Christmas Eve, the gentlemen ghosts probably feel as if they're all ahead and go about making solemn resolutions themselves that they will stop in next Christmas Eve, while lady specters are contradictory and snappish and liable to burst into tears and leave the room hurriedly on being spoken to for no perceptible cause whatsoever. Ghosts with no position to maintain, mere middle-class ghosts. Occasionally, I believe, do a little haunting on off nights, All Hallows Eve, Midsummer. Some will even run up for a mere local event to celebrate, for instance, the anniversary of the hanging of somebody's grandfather, or a prophecy of misfortune. He does love prophesying a misfortune, does the average British ghost. Send him out to prognosticate trouble to somebody, and he is happy. Let him force his way into a peaceful home and turn the whole house upside down by foretelling a funeral, or predicting a bankruptcy, or hinting at a coming disgrace, or some other terrible disaster about which nobody in their senses want to know sooner than they can possibly help, and the prior knowledge of which can serve no useful purpose whatsoever. And he feels he is combining duty with pleasure. He would never forgive himself if anybody in his family had a trouble and he had not been there for a couple months beforehand doing silly tricks on the lawn or balancing himself on somebody's bed rail. There are, besides the very young or very conscientious ghosts, with a lost will or an undiscovered number weighing heavily on their minds, who will haunt steadily all year round, and also the fussy ghost who is indignant at having been buried in the dustbin or in the village pond, and never gives the parish a single night of quiet until somebody has paid for a first-class funeral for him. These are the exceptions. As I've said, the average Orthodox ghost does his one turn a year on Christmas Eve and is satisfied. Why Christmas Eve of all nights of the year, I never could myself understand. It's one of the most dismal of nights to be out, cold, muddy, wet. And besides, at Christmas time, everybody has quite enough to put up with in the way of a house full of living relations, without wanting the ghosts of any dead ones mooning about as well. Not only do the ghosts themselves always walk on Christmas Eve, but live people always sit and talk about them on Christmas Eve. Whenever 5 or 6 English-speaking people meet round a fire on Christmas Eve, they start telling each other ghost stories. Nothing satisfies us on Christmas Eve but to hear each other tell authentic anecdotes about specters. It is a genial, festive season. We love to muse upon graves and dead bodies and murders and blood. There's a good deal of similarity about the ghost story. This is not our fault, but the ghosts, who never try any new performances, but always keep steadily to old, safe business. As a result, when you have been at one Christmas Eve party and heard 6 peoples relate their adventures with the spirits, you don't need to hear any more ghost stories. To listen to any further ghost stories would be redundant. There's always the young man who was, one year, spending Christmas at a country house, and on Christmas Eve, They put him to sleep in the west wing. Then, in the middle of the night, the room door quietly opens and somebody, generally a lady in her nightdress, quietly walks in slowly and comes and sits on the bed. The young man thinks it must be one of the visitors or some relative, though he doesn't remember having previously seen her, who, unable to go to sleep and feeling lonesome all by herself, has come into his room for a chat. He has no idea it's a ghost. He's so unsuspicious. She does not speak, however, and when he looks again, she is gone. The young man relates the circumstance at the breakfast table next morning and asks each of the ladies present if it was she who was his visitor, but they all assure him it was not. And the host, who has grown deathly pale, begs him to say no more about the matter. After breakfast, the host takes the young man aside into a corner and explains to him what he saw was the ghost of a lady who had been murdered in that very bed. Who had murdered somebody on the very bed. It doesn't matter which. You can be a ghost by murdering somebody. You can be a ghost by being murdered. The murder ghost, at least you can frighten people better because you can show your wounds and groans and all kinds of cool stuff like that. There's a skeptical guest. It's always the guest. A ghost never thinks much of his own family. It's the guest he likes to haunt who, after listening to the host's ghost stories on Christmas Eve, laughs at it, says he does not believe in ghosts, and he will sleep in the haunted chamber that very night if they let him. Everyone urges him not to be reckless, but he persists in his foolishness and goes up to the yellow chamber, or whatever color it is, with a light heart and a candle, and wishes them all good night and shuts the door. Next morning, he has got snow white hair. He does not tell anybody what he has seen. It is too awful. There's the plucky guest who sees a ghost and knows it is a ghost and watches it. It comes into the room and disappears through the wainscot, after which, as the ghost doesn't come back, he says, oh, maybe I'll go to sleep. He does not mention having seen the ghost to anybody for fear of frightening them. Some people are so nervous about ghosts, but determines to wait the next night for the apparition to appear again. It does appear, and this time he gets out of bed, dresses himself, does his hair, follows it, discovers a secret passage leading from the bedroom down into the beer cellar. A passage which no doubt was not unfrequently made use of in the days of yore. And there's the young man who woke up with a strange sensation in the middle of the night and found his rich bachelor uncle standing beside him. The rich uncle smiled a weird sort of smile and vanished. The young man immediately got up and looked at his watch. It had stopped at 4:30, he having forgotten to wind it. He made inquiries the next day and found that, strangely enough, his rich uncle, whose only nephew he was, had married a widow with 11 children at exactly 11:45 only 2 days ago. He does not attempt to explain the circumstance, he only vouches for its validity. And there's the case of the gentleman returning home late at night from a Freemason's dinner who, noticing a light issuing from ruined abbey, creeps up, looks through a keyhole, sees the ghost of a gray sister kissing the ghost of a brown monk, and is so inexpressibly shocked and frightened that he faints on the spot and is discovered there the next morning lying in a heap against the door, still speechless, with his faithful latchkey clasped tightly in his hand. All these things happen on Christmas Eve. All these things are told of on Christmas Eve. For ghost stories to be told on any other evening than the evening of the 24th of December would be impossible in English society in Victorian times. Therefore, in introducing sad but authentic ghost stories, I feel it is unnecessary to inform the student of Anglo-Saxon literature that the date on which they were told and on which the incidents took place was Christmas Eve. Nevertheless, I do so.